Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again for the virtual edition of our Heritage Wilmot meetings. Welcome also to those who are viewing either online, live, or afterwards. I'd like to start off with the Territorial Acknowledgement, which I'll share with the group. We've gathered virtually in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, the peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant in the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we're reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community. Moving on to disclose your pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have a pecuniary interest to disclose? Seeing none, we'll move on to review of the minutes from the March 15th meeting. Any comments, questions, omissions, additions? Could I have a motion to approve the minutes? Al, and second, Jen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to business items. First item we had was the non-designated Heritage Register photo update. I put this on just to see if there's an update from the subcommittee taking photos. Jen and Yvonne, I think you guys had a bit of an update to share.
Yes, we have not had a chance to get out to take pictures. We've been delayed by weather a number of times, but we are planning to go out this Monday.
Excellent.
It's on our calendar.
Perfect. Great. I look forward to hearing the results of your field trips.
Hey, Nick, I thought we were going to include a house in Mannheim on Nectal Drive, the original farmhouse. I thought we were going to include that on the non-designated.
As photos to retake, or do you mean in a new edition?
Addition.
Oh, okay. That is a good segue because we're talking about that shortly. So we can jot that one down to make sure we don't forget about that one.
Yeah, we've talked about that for the last 2 or 3 years and we haven't included that yet.
Oh, okay. Well, we can add it. Do you know the address of that by chance, Ren?
No, but it's, as soon as you get off Bleems Road, it's, you know, you go down Mannheim Drive and it's directly in front of you. It's the oldest house there.
Okay.
I was going to, if I can jump, I was going to suggest maybe, Ren, if you're able to do a drive-by and see if you could able to get an address, then pass it, then I can add it to our ongoing list.
Yeah, because it's the property that was there originally, and then they sold the farm and created that whole subdivision.
Okay.
Okay. Next item we had was Baden Mill, Livingston Mill, update on the demolition application for the silos and associated structures. First off, thank you, Bark, for presenting, and Yvonne for being there as well, representing Heritage Wilmot at the meeting earlier this week. Great job on the presentation and answering questions. Thanks also to Jen and Barry, though he's not here, just for your commentary from both council and the Heritage Wilmot perspectives. As you all know, council in the end voted not to designate the building under the act, but it would seem we have an opportunity to visit the property again for documentation purposes. And I understand the owners also offered if there's any salvage materials that we would like, they can be identified at that time too. Marg, Yvonne, Tracy, or anyone really, was there anything else you wanted to add on that? Yvonne?
Yeah. Mark, you did an excellent job with your presentation, and I thank you. I had done some research into the Heritage Toolkit before the meeting, and I was really disappointed that no one asked for any comments from the sort of the other person there from Heritage Wilmot, because I was going to point out that there is an article which refers to not taking condition into consideration for the designation. So, and of course, I cannot find the article at this moment, but the reference, I heard it mentioned several times during the property owner's presentation. And I didn't feel like it had been given enough consideration or mention. So that is, I wanted to make sure that just gets said. Yeah.
Thanks, Yvonne. Tracy.
Yvonne, the toolkit, just 'cause I know it quite well. Would it have been in a, just looking here, was it like in a checklist where it has like a numbered list? I've got a, it's like 1 to 11 or 1 to 12 or something on things to keep in mind on cultural heritage properties. And
it was an article with a sub-article with and it was a handwritten thing.
Okay.
Because at that point, I was just jotting it down, thinking, remember, and I will find it and I will pass it on. And I'm really sorry. It's probably somewhere in the recycling right now.
Okay, because I bet you it plays off of the on the checklist on what they would call number 8, and it says using physical condition as determining factor and whether or not to list a property on the register is not advised. A property may be in an altered or deteriorated condition, but this may not be affecting its cultural heritage value or interest. That's what I thought. But if there was an article, but that just ties into there, but just thought I'd share that.
I guess one thing we should learn from that whole situation is that the one thing that they said was that that property did not have a proper identification or roll number. And is that the clerk's responsibility to ensure that the information is correct, or is that ours? I don't know. But we should, in the future, be careful to make sure that the information is totally correct.
Yeah, and I think, Ren, in the case here, we were putting the whole mill complex on as one listing. And I think that was part of the reason for some of the comments too, that it was multiple properties under one listing. I think you mentioned that too, Harry. That was some possibly confusion with how the listing was and what was referenced for important features and things. So yeah, that's something we'll just make sure we look at when we update the register.
Yeah.
Like the roll, sorry, as I say, the roll numbers were correct. It's just that because it was so many on one where it should have been divided, but roll numbers were correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Welcome, Adam. Tracy, do you hand up?
I was just going to mention we do have the property owner with us. So when we were discussing about touring, acknowledging that he had offered to allow us to tour. So I wanted to share that afterwards I can work with Mr. Stewart on selecting a date that would be suitable for him and our committee to tour as well. But if there was any questions or anything like that, he's with us in the meeting.
Thanks, Tracy. Oh, Jen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on what Tracy was just saying about visiting the property. I would highly encourage anyone to visit. I went on Saturday at Mr. Snyder's request, and it was a really interesting and enjoyable exercise. I would go back again to look some more. I took a lot of pictures, and some things I wasn't able to photograph very well, so I'd like a chance to photograph some of them. And I'm very, very happy that and grateful that Mr. Snyder is willing to let us take some items of interest before the silos are torn down.
Yeah, I would like to go and take a good look at it too, rather than just kind of do the drive-by earlier on. Oh, Yvonne, you had your hand up.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to add to that. It's very interesting architecture. And I took the photographs for some of the presentation, and Marg wrote the architectural description. So going there and just looking at the structure and how it's put together, and which came first, right? Like, was this attached first? Did this come next? It's actually very interesting how the building was built over time. So hopefully, as it is brought down, we'll be able to actually see it kind of peeled back and see the history within as it comes down. That's a positive way of looking at that, I guess.
That was maybe a question I had for the owner, actually, was what's the anticipated timing before you're ready to take the silos down? Oh, maybe he's not there.
I can see he's here. Raj, oh, I think he's coming on now.
Sorry, I was muted here, so sorry, guys.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry, what had you asked, Nick?
Well, I was just wondering if you had an anticipated timing to take the silos down in the buildings.
Well, I guess the plan was to take it down this winter. It was supposed to be a winter project. I haven't talked to the crew here yet to see whether we're going to carry on with it. I guess to me, I would probably say the sooner the better, just because purchase for the property is waiting in the wings, and if we wait too long, he's going to possibly lose interest. We can't go forward anyways until the official plan is done, hopefully this fall sometime. So it may be a summer project, but myself personally, I have more time in the fall that it may end up waiting till the fall to get done.
Okay, that's helpful.
As things progress, I can keep you guys informed as to how things are progressing.
Okay. Tracy, I saw you had your hand up right before I asked a question.
It was more of a comment. I was going to share that just from a similarity point of view, and just from the history of the mills, and just how you have earlier ones and kind of newer ones. I follow quite closely Livingston's Mills in Montreal, where he had his base, which is very similar to the ones for late 1800s that are in Baden, and he also had it in Montreal, right on the Lachine. It's part of the old port. And then as the decades go on, behind it is another one of his mills, which is actually very similar to the one we're talking about right now. And so the recognition, again, for a transition of the evolution of the mills and how they look in silos, very similar in Montreal on the old brick, very similar, and then sort of the quote unquote sort of the newer one. I'm actually off there for this weekend, and so every time I go, I document. So I'd be happy to share on that, because they're doing revitalization down there and just reuse. But it's interesting to see how similar it is to here.
Yeah, that'd be great to share, Tracy, when you're back.
Mm-hmm.
Are they still in use in Montreal?
No, they are abandoned, and the major one in the old port, which I mean, you'd recognize sort of like Five Roses flower. That is sort of the big one there, and then there's one they call mill or silo number 5 is their big one. It is the oldest one, I think, for Canada. It's if you've ever in the old port there, it's massive, and they are repurposing that, I think, for like condos, and there might be a museum down below, and just it's kind of like a street of abandoned mills. And Livingston's is conveniently on Mill Street. I think it's 27 Mill Street, but they are, I think, the only ones left. So, you know, they've got typical like graffiti all over them. They look, for people that like to do, you know, I mean, it's all private property, of course, and but they definitely are abandoned. And now the city's realizing, it's on, like, Heritage Montreal has them on their list. The big ones are protected, and they're just looking at how to increase, like, with tourism and make use of something. But it's fascinating on the similarities. No different on other areas where he had his mills.
Okay.
And actually, next time, I'm going to take a photo as well and share with the committee on the placards that they do in Montreal as well. And I don't think a lot of people realize that they mention Baden. They will call it the Livingston linseed, but they spell linseed Lind. They put a D in linseed, but they call it the Livingston linseed oil mill, and recognize the early contributions.
Very neat. Well, I appreciate the ability to go visit the site again. And Jen, you said you'd like to go again. Is there anyone else who would like to see it? Al? Patty?
I was going to ask Mr. Snyder, the email I sent earlier, if you and I were to connect next week or whenever it's convenient, that we could set up maybe 1 or 2 dates that would work. And then I would be happy to coordinate with the committee a date to come tour.
Well, it won't be a problem. I have to go in with a tractor and loader to unbarricade it, cement blocks, trying to keep the kids out. So it's a matter of the fewer times I go in, the better. But there can be a couple of days that we can take time to do it. So it's a matter of knowing when it suits everybody and try and work around it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can just have just 1 date then, and just have to remove the barrier once for you.
Yeah, we'll just go once.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, anything else on the mill? Yeah. All right, well, thank you, Mr. Snyder, for being available. Oh, Jen, you had your hand up.
Sorry, it's actually, you know, off of this. It's not this one, but the remaining properties. Can we, as a committee, talk about and I don't know, maybe this is something to put on the agenda for next month, but to start the conversation with the property owner to designate the, you know, especially like the brick parts and the rest of the complex. What's the process to get that started as the committee?
That was part 2 of my mill discussion, Jen. So yeah, I had that down. So there's definitely interest in pursuing designation for the balance of the mill. I was thinking that maybe it would be appropriate for maybe Tracy and I to reach out to the property owner and maybe have a meeting, and then maybe we can arrange a tour of the property or something. I think that would be great. I know it's been on our register for a while. There's interest in the committee, and sounds like support on council too for pursuing it. So that's great. Anyone thoughts on that?
I think it would be a really interesting tour. And since we have, it's fresh in our minds, right? So it would be really interesting to be able to see how this structure fits in with that structure.
Mm-hmm. Tracy.
Going to mention that if anyone's ever toured, you've had the mill open for like doors open, really interesting behind the scenes. And then where once Nick and I can at least approach him and the topic of this, and then the idea would be to then invite the rest of the committee to see if we can all tour to see it as well, but at least initiate the conversation, because it is, it's beautiful in there. And the amount of documentation that I would have for this place, I've shared over the years on photos from the early years that we have inside what the boardroom looks like from 1990 or something. It's really neat.
So I would say it's probably definitely a high priority to look at for designating. I know on our work plan, I think we had to look at another designation for this year. So we'll see where this goes, but maybe this ends up being the one we get to do. So that would be great. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on the bill for now? Okay, well, Tracy and I will, Tracy, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to the owner, if you have the contact info, and then we can set up a meeting and we'll have an initial chat with them, see where it goes, and then maybe we can have a tour and start things moving along. Excellent. Okay, I think that's all for that item. We can move on to new business. So I had updating the register, additional updates for this year. So I know there were some other things that we talked about previously that we wanted to add to the register. Some of the things were in the draft work plan Tracy put together. I jotted down. We're looking at maybe natural areas, bridges. I don't know if there was anything else. Ren, obviously the house you just mentioned. We can jot that one down. Yvonne?
I would like the Arboretum to be added.
Yep.
Then I know you, Yvonne and Margie, you'd taken some photos and done evaluation for a couple of the bridges already, I believe. And I can't recall if there was any other ones we wanted to look at. I guess if there is anyone, let us know, either email or share some photos or however, that would be great. And then I know we have some formatting things to look at as well. As you mentioned, just about the roll numbers and just making sure we have it separated. So if it's each property has its own entry. I think the mill might have been the only one that was multiple properties grouped into one, just because it was a complex. But we should just double check to make sure that there aren't any other situations like that. And then the other thing I jotted down was taking off the mill property that we've been talking about for the demolition. So we'll just make sure we have those things down. And then I know there's always kind of formatting updates and things too, Tracy. Ren, have you hand up?
Is it time that we start looking in the urban areas for non-designated properties? I know we've been working on outside of the, but is it time to start looking at the urban areas more?
I think that's a great idea, Ren. We've finished really the rural areas, and with the exception to a few things that we're adding for this year, I think that would be good to start looking at those areas.
Yeah, because there's going to be some places that we're going to, if we don't do it, they're going to fall through the cracks really quick.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a suggestion on ones to start at, Ren, or you think?
No, just,
urban. Oh, Al, you have your hand waving.
Marg, are you going to address this or should I? Because Marg and I are the ones who have been doing the tours to visit most of these places. So, and we've talked about which locations and suggestions, and the list is endless. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to decide what to focus on first. I mean, we've done really well, right, with the schools and the churches, and trying to decide, and the main arteries, right? So now trying to decide where to start, and I think it came up as looking at perhaps just beyond the Heritage District, because you've already got an area there, and there are certainly properties that are just beyond the Heritage District that are definitely considerations. But Marg, would you say something here?
That's
Yes.
that's a great idea. Yep.
We need to finish Schneider's Road from where Baden stops. Snyder's Road then continues on, of course, right to Tressler, to the boundary. That's got to be done both sides.
Okay.
And then we had talked about starting in Baden. Because New Dundee is done. And so I want to see Snyder's Road done and Baden started after we see where we go with the Livingstone Mill and the designation of the part on the south side of Charles Street. And had we talked about anything else? I think that's pretty much it for now. That gives us a lot to do.
Sorry, Mark, I was just jotting that down to make sure I had it. So you had Snyder's Road to Mannheim, and then like from Baden out to Mannheim, and then
From Baden out to
sorry,
Trustler
to
Road.
Trustler.
is the-
Okay.
which is
Trustler
your
Road.
boundary
Yeah.
road. Yeah,
Waldo.
that's right, Waldo.
Yeah.
On both sides, there are houses on both sides that we have to make decisions on. And then we thought we'd start Baden.
Yep.
If I can jump in, I know there's a long list there, but I just want to mention that this sort of dovetails on what Yvonne said. One area that I would strongly look at in New Hamburg to start with would be Waterloo Street. Starting at the bottom of the hill with the intersection with Huron, all the way up, at least to the railway tracks, but if not beyond. Area has never, ever really been looked at. I think there were 2 houses on there that were on the list at one point. I don't know if they're still on an original list, but just to the point where I'm going with this is that was the route when the railway came in, and that was the access. And there's a lot of older buildings there, some very interesting ones. The building that was known as the Cranberry House, which Roy and Terry had, that building is not on our list. And it should be. It's just not on the list, and it is very interesting architecturally. And it was also owned by William Miller, lawyer Miller, who was a very influential person in town. So Waterloo Street needs to be. I just want to get it mentioned. I know we got a lot on our plates, but I just want to get that in the minutes so that we know that we're thinking about it. There's other areas in the Hamburg, as well, but that's an important thoroughfare that we need to take a good look at.
Okay,
And then I wonder if you're looking at kind of important thoroughfares, I wonder if Huron and Peel would be the next ones maybe to cover. And then I really like the idea, Yvonne, of going beyond the Heritage District and looking at those areas. I think that's a good way to expand out too. So maybe that's possibly the approach for New Hamburg, is go Waterloo Street, Huron, Peel, and then out from the Heritage District.
well, there are houses on Bleams as well that we
Yeah.
should look at. Mhm.
Yep.
I'm wondering if maybe we should look at having multiple groups go do inventory. There's a lot of areas to cover. Something to think about. Tracy, I saw your hand up too.
You just said exactly what I was going
really?
to say. And I thought, it's a lot to put on 2 members. And if we were to expand, and even just listening to Al's knowledge on knowing exactly what house and some history and things, I think it would benefit if we had some more people like in like pods on if say Al and someone else or 2 or 3 people were to group in on New Hamburg, that would really help out on at least identifying address, a photo, and key features. So many hands make light work.
And we can even start with like a very high level look at the properties, and then from there we can take it further for the ones that we're really interested in. Oh, Yvonne, I saw your hand up too. Oh, and Ren.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there really is a long list of potential properties, and maybe if we had a small team kind of evaluating, you know, we need to start somewhere, and we need an evaluation. And I don't know anyone who is as well versed in architectural descriptions though as Marg, and I'm definitely not. I'm not capable, right? I mean, the photography I can do, but Marg does the architectural descriptions. And does anyone else in this group know how to do that? Because that narrows down our thing there.
Yeah, I have some knowledge of that. I know not as familiar as Marg.
That's
but,
ridiculous. Of course you do. I'm sorry. I really apologize. That is like, that's a real faux pas. I'm sorry, Nick.
Yeah, I'd love to help with that, actually. It'd be interesting. Ren, you've got the hand up for a bit.
Does anybody know the status of Marie Voisin's book that she was doing on New Hamburg homes? That could really help us out if it's close to publication.
I don't know where she is. I loaned some material to her earlier this year, so I don't know how close it is to publication. So I know she's working.
Do you think Ernie would know? I could email Ernie and ask him if he knows.
Well, you could email Yvonne, or you could email.
I could email Marie and just blurt it right out, right?
Instead of reinventing the wheel, we may be able to help from her information.
I'm wondering if
idea.
I'm wondering if we go through and look at houses that we're interested in, and then that would be a good source for some of the background information. Maybe there's some of the detailed descriptions and things.
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion.
Because I noticed we've lost another house in Baden, the little white house beside the church in the Livingston Church that went down today.
What did it?
And we never had a chance to take pictures. So,
yeah, the whole thing is.
So I wish that we could get a little more information when a house is going to go down. Is that a thing from you, Howie, or how do we get in that loop?
Yeah, I can answer that. I can answer that. On this one,
Okay.
Ren, you were circulated. The committee was circulated and discussed it several months ago. From development services perspective, we try to give as much information as possible, but ultimately, there's other than notifying you as soon as, whether it's on the demolition, whether it's on the registry or not, we circulate all demolition permits. That's our protocol. So I just, in terms of that process is in place, but we don't actually go out and take the photos and make those connections. We just notify you so that you have the time to do that. So I think that's probably been 4 or 5 months at least that has passed since that notice was given. I can double check that if you're interested in it.
I didn't know about it. So
yeah, I was going to say thanks for circulating when there is a demolition, because it is helpful to look at. That's one that obviously we didn't get a chance to go take a picture of. Jen, you've had your hand up a bit. Sorry.
Can I jump on the demolition thing? I know this is really sort of off the mandate of our committee, but I'm noticing there are a lot of buildings that are being purchased. It's happened to at least 3 here in New Dundee in the last number of years that would be low end. With the housing crisis we have today, these buildings are not the greatest buildings. They would have been a good starter home for someone. Someone with deep pockets has bought these properties, torn them down, and built monster homes out of them, thereby removing a possible residence for someone who does not have big bucks. And it's kind of discouraging. It sort of has a heritage aspect because they are older buildings. I'm thinking of the one that was torn down on Peel Street in Hamburg. But there almost needs to be a moratorium on these demolitions, because this is what's happening. Good affordable housing is being taken off the market and torn down and winds up in the landfill. And it's not a very environmentally friendly thing to do as well. So I just want to put that out there, but I think the township should be looking at discussing about declaring some kind of moratorium on demolitions, but with proviso that if a building is damaged in a fire or a hurricane or something, it could be torn down. But it just seems to me there's buildings that are being torn down that shouldn't be torn down, simply because somebody wants to put a bigger house on the property. And it's not intensification. It's not. It's just somebody putting a bigger house on a lot in place of one that's already there. That I can't off my soapbox now. I see how he's smiling.
Yeah,
I can try to respond if you want a little bit.
sure.
Certainly, I appreciate the sentiment that the cheapest house is the one that's already there. But the reality is, in a free market economy, and the commodification of housing that's occurred across the country, it's not just a Wilmot issue, is that it's a bidding war for every old house that comes up. And to be fair, I think it actually is intensification 9 times out of 10. Most old houses are torn down. In Baden, usually ends up with 2 semis, all have basement apartments. So you end up with 8 units where there was previously 1 single. Was that single probably something that could have been rented out cheaply? Yes. But if you look at the various homes, and even the one on Peel Street, Al, the proposal is to where there was 1 house, there will now be 2, is what the gentleman who's acquired it is saying. Is it sad to see the demolition? Absolutely. But the township, and you know, from your days as a councillor, we have to operate within the legislation that we're provided. We can't just say we want a moratorium on everything we don't agree with. I guess we can, but it's not the productive. It's I don't know. It's kind of counterproductive, because we are trying to encourage intensification wherever we can get it, the creation of secondary suites and basements. And I think, to be fair, certainly in New Dundee, there's been a couple that have been torn down that turned into monster homes. And again, there's nothing legally we can do to stop that. But Baden and New Hamburg, where these small singles, there's one that just sold on Milton Street that our understanding is there'll be a infilling unit in between 2 existing homes. Every home that's bought isn't torn down, but a lot of times they have units added to them. And that does help with the housing crisis. But again, the days of affordable home ownership are probably, that ship sailed several years ago, right? Like it's, so I'm not trying to take you off your soapbox, but there are a lot of positives that do come out of some of these intensification. And certainly, you know, nobody seems to want intensification in their neighborhood, but nobody wants greenfield development either. So somewhere along the line, we got to provide homes for people. And if it's not going to be greenfield, then I think it's a fair thing in terms of even what the committee deals with the registry is the pressures of no greenfield. In the old days, everything was greenfield. Nobody considered infilling and intensification. So there wasn't the attack, if you will, on older structures, because you just take out another farm and add more houses. Well, we're trying not to do that, but then it puts that pressure internal. Again, as you've seen with the mill property, is that's where the pressure comes back then, and it creates conflicts. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, this is a province-wide issue, as you rightly pointed out. It's almost like the gravel pit. It's almost like the gravel pit issue, and that something needs to be done, because these homes are, I mean, I hear what you say, but these properties are lower priced, which means someone that doesn't, it would still be an opportunity for someone that doesn't have a big pot of money to buy.
Yeah. And I think the reality though, Al, is they're not lower priced anymore. We're seeing these, the home on Milton Street, for example. I noticed Lawrence Riddell's house, Jeanette Lang lived there most recently.
Yeah.
That property sold for over $1 million, Al.
Yeah, I know that.
It's not a lower, even though it's an older house. The
street for me sold for $1.1 million the other day. So
I just think suggesting that they're lower priced is not necessarily a true statement.
Well, the one on Hunter Street, is that the same thing? The property beside Bill Ritz's place?
Yeah, I don't know the price tag on that one, but the reality is these properties are going for $1 million. Like they're not lower priced, Al. They're not, it's not a home being taken away from a minimum wage worker. That's for sure.
Well, I guess that's a reason to make sure we identify the properties that we are really interested in.
Okay,
Jen, you've had your hand up for a while. Sorry.
Thanks. I'm going to go all the way back to the conversation about who has the skills to describe architecture adequately. And I certainly do not possess those, but I do possess a camera. So maybe we can make better use of the skill set and time of our committee if, you know, like all of us who know how to take pictures do go and take pictures. And identify areas that we should take pictures. And then we give Marg the pictures so she doesn't have to drive around. And Nick, you know, the two of you can provide us with the expertise and commentary on the pictures we've taken. And you might have to send us back to take new ones if you're like, where I need to see the rest of this. But I think that's something that might help us to make better use and not burden Marg and you, Nick, with so much.
I think that's a great way to divide things up.
So if I can add on that topic, I'd be willing to do some stuff on New Hamburg, but it would have to wait until the fall because the countdown is on to head to the cottage. But I do have a camera too. I have a brand new camera that I'm trying to learn how to use. So
Okay, well, it's definitely not going to be a short or a small task to do them all, so I'm sure it'll carry over. Mark, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's much better if I go with the person who's doing the photography and then I actually see the building. I do afterwards, you rely on pictures a fair bit for the architectural description, but I always visit the building itself with a photographer, and then you get both jobs done at the same time.
Well, it might work well to have a pair go out and then take photos, and then you can see the building too, and then go back after and do the more detailed descriptions. Okay. Tracy?
A few thoughts. So yeah, I think with the the document, and that's why I like with Marg and Yvonne working together, where one's photos, and I think if we explore sort of doing it in maybe different groups. And architecturally, I happen to have a document that Marg helped me with years ago in architecture. So on how to identify just sort of the basics on some, to at least start maybe some preliminary work for other people that can assist. So maybe I can recirculate that to this committee on architectural styles and some basic terminology for each of the different styles here for Wilmot. And Marg, I think it must have been easily 10 years ago you helped me with that on that are styles specific to this municipality. So then we can have that in some basic description. Also thinking about being mindful of when we are documenting to make sure there are letters for like when Marg and Yvonne go to give property owner. So if you need to step on property, to be mindful of the letter to express that you're from a committee, this is what you're doing to ask permission. And that's when you go in person. I know it's what they do on talking to the property owner, and sometimes they bring them in places that they wouldn't really know about or maybe have access to. And so I'm going to recirculate that. And then as well as I'm thinking the assessment too. So we can kind of look at that, or where maybe if some can do some preliminary to at least assist, but just little things that we need to be mindful of when we're doing this.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, that sounds like a good plan. Anyone have anything else on the non-designated? If not, then we can move on to the next item, which was the water lot. Just a quick update on the proposed renovations. So Tracy and I met with the architects, I guess last week it was, virtually, just to talk about their overall concept for the site. So in addition to the restoration work, they are looking at, in addition to the building as well, to kind of replace the existing additions. generally in that location. So they're still in early stages of the design and sorting out things like material and things like that. But they're hopeful that they can come and present their initial renderings and things like that at a heritage meeting shortly. So I know they were going to try and target the May meeting, so we'll see if that timing works. But if not, I expect it would be June. So we'll keep everyone up to date on that as their work progresses, and then they can share what they're working on. Tracy, was there anything else you wanted to add on that one?
No, I think you covered it on
Okay.
basically waiting until we have something, or they have something to present.
Okay. So that was really all on the water lot. I think we can move on to correspondence. I didn't have anything on the agenda, but since we finalized the agenda, there was an email that came just about the waterfront in New Hamburg. So there's information that's been posted on the website for the project to redo they call it the Promenade along the water. There's some work on both sides of the river, I believe, and they've got some initial renderings and things like that on the website to take a look at. So they're interested to hear comments generally from the community and also from Heritage Wilmot. So I'll send the email that I got after this meeting so everyone has it handy. But there's just an online portal to go and put in comments. So it's not like a formal letter that we would send in on behalf of the committee, but there's a way you can submit comments online through the website. So encourage everyone to take a look at the information there and send in your thoughts. Yvonne, I see your hand up there. Oh, and L2 after that.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that there's quite a short timeline for feedback on this. So April the 25th is the deadline.
Great.
The other thing to keep in mind is when you see the first picture, it's not a real rendition because there's 2 rows of trees and there aren't 2 rows of trees planned. There's various things. This is not Heritage Wilmot topic specifically, but the plan is to remove 11 maple trees, mostly maple trees, I think, existing trees. And I would consider this area to be an extension, a natural extension of the Heritage Downtown, and respecting 30-plus-year-old trees versus cutting them down to put in a path. I have grave concerns about this particular plan and the destruction and various and other things, but that is sort of my, in a nutshell, pitch.
Thanks, Yvonne. I had a quick look at them the other day. Clearly more detail is required to take a look at. Al, you had your hand up too.
Yeah, this area is within the boundary of the Heritage Conservation District. So I'm thinking that rather than responding as individuals, it might be appropriate for the committee to respond because it is in the district. So I you know, because it is part of the, I mean, the thing that drove the district to be put in place was the combination of architecture with natural heritage, the riverbanks. And the study area actually included all of the river and all of downtown New Hamburg, and the end result was what we got. So that part of the river is in the boundary, both sides of the river. So it's definitely, it's something that maybe we should comment. At least individuals should, but maybe something should come from the committee as a whole.
Plus the river is also a heritage river.
Yeah, it's part of the heritage designation of the
yeah.
Grand River. Yeah.
Okay, Patty?
Have they said what kind of maple trees those are?
We think they're Norway maples, but they are the area along there. They're right along the edge of the parking lot. And
Okay.
the area is heavily used. They provide very deep shade, and
That's-
people sit on the grass under those trees all the time. And I cannot envision removing them to replace them with a path. I mean, I think the majority of people would love to sit in the shade of a maple tree versus passing by on a path from point A to point B.
There's certainly an argument that if they got into this, there's an argument that Norway maples are considered invasive now. And as long as they're not near a wooded area, it's not a big danger, but they spread really, really easily. And the deep shade is a problem in woods, so.
I think Yvonne makes a good point. I mean, I'm part of Let's Tree Wilmot as well. But we should be adding to the trees we have, not removing the trees to put another tree in its place. That sort of defeats the purpose of trying to expand our forest cover here.
And those maples were they were the tree du jour. I mean, they were
Yes.
planted everywhere. This is
That's
not
right.
an exception. At the time, those
That's
were
right.
the trees that were being planted. And the other thing about removing them, planting new trees is you have to look at the plans. The detail plans are really important for this because the devil's in the details, okay? Because the suggestion is to plant trees on the incline heading down to the river. And it just shows how little they understand the massive torrent that comes through there at least once a year. And I'm not sure what would be planted that would actually root there, like, right? Unless you put in willows, but that is not part of the plan. I know we're getting off of heritage here, but I really, really encourage people, and I'm with Al. I would consider these trees are like, let's call them our mid-century modern trees. I don't know, like, right? It's better than no trees at all, right?
It
We're
all
looking at least 20 years before new trees provide shade. I'll be gone by then, right? And it's not broken. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's not broken. So why do you have to fix it? Please speak to this, Howie.
Harold.
I would like to speak to it, and I'm not trying to. I feel like I'm arguing with everyone. I think, Yvonne, you have to also look at why this project started and the history of it. So in 95-ish, streetscape study, earlier than that, when the water wheel went in, this area was the gem. Everybody went there. It's falling apart and breaking down because of the flow of the water. I think it's fair to say that the people involved in this study totally understand the impacts of water, including GRCA, and that the design that's there, it's not accessible. We're trying to build an accessible core and accessible community. And certainly the plans are circulated for comments. Maybe there's a way to save the trees, protect them during construction. I haven't been involved at that level. But to say that there's no need for this to be done, like I think we need to be fair that we're trying to create this area to be accessible
you're
for.
misunderstanding what I'm saying. You're misunderstanding.
Right,
I'm talking about the row of trees along the top. I'm not saying anything about the, maintaining and improving the waterway, which is a necessity. I'm talking about the people portion.
Right. And I'm talking about the people portion as well, Yvonne,
Okay.
in that this area is not accessible and not easily accessible, certainly not in a wheelchair, but for families with strollers and such. Everything's heaved. It doesn't flow nicely. And the whole point of the design, the grants that were received from various levels of government to make this back to being the showpiece of a core area that's the predominant core in the township. And I'm just suggesting that you have to look at the project as a whole. The whole reason for circulating is to get input such as yours. And I'm sure that the committee that's dealing with it will value that input. But it's important to note that the purpose of this project is to revigorate this area and make it accessible to all of our residents, not just those who can climb over broken concrete and asphalt that's heaved and such. So I just want to throw that in to ensure that it's a balanced, at least a balanced description of what the project is, because it's more than just a project that's trying to rip out trees from downtown New Hamburg. It's definitely not what the focus is. The focus is to make that area accessible.
Yeah, I think it could use some work. Jen,
So do
you had it.
we access this online then, the plans?
Yes, there's a link on the
I've not been
township
paying
website.
attention, I'm sorry.
I'll send out the email that they had forwarded us just right after the meeting. So
Okay,
everyone
thanks.
has it.
I knew it was happening, but I was ignoring it, I guess. Thanks.
Tracy and Jen
Yvonne,
both had your
can I,
hands up.
one more thing
Oh, yeah.
about Norway maples. The problem is when they escape into a wooded area, and I'm just trying to think there how close we are. But I know, when you go along the river, there's certainly, they just shade everything out and like the trees there, and if that's all it is, but they seed so rapidly. They've developed new ones that don't seed as
Yeah, you'd
as
have to look at,
vigorously.
you'd have to actually look at the area to get a
Yeah,
feel for
yeah.
it. Yeah, some of us have been down there.
You're
quite a-
there, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're there. I live there. I'm there.
Yeah.
On the topic of Norway maples, I mean, they are, not the tree du jour anymore by any stretch of the imagination. But all the trees that line the Banshell Park in New Dundee, I think the maples in there, they're all Norway maples.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
They are, yeah.
And we can't begin to take them all down because they're mature trees. So, in the case of what we're talking about, they're not going to damage another woodlot because there are a row of trees along the river, and there's pavement on one side and the river on the other. So they don't need to be taken down for that reason. I mean, there can be other trees hopefully planted along there, like more sugar maples or whatever we come up with. But anyway, that's enough about Norway maples.
Thanks.
Jen, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so a couple things. Norway maples have taken over the entire riverbank along my farm, and we're working to actually correct that. So that's my comment about Norway maples. We're going to be planting a whole bunch of other things, and we're using the Norway maples as shelter from the ice flows until the other trees get established.
Yeah. We're working pretty hard at getting them out here too. It's a problem when they get into a wooded area or any place that they're not being controlled.
I have the same problem in my woodlot along the river.
Yeah, and part of the issue that we've found is that as they do get older, they are not a solid, stable tree. They tend to break easily, and it so we're going to be planting all sorts of other great things like bur oak and tulip trees, and
Nice.
it's going to be great. The project for the promenade, it is up for comment. I had not looked at the details. I'm sure you all might have been aware that we kind of had a rather large project on our plates, on our agendas as council for a while. And that had me doing a lot of reading of a lot of details. So I have not gotten into the details on the promenade one yet, and I intend to do that. I did share the link out on my social media, and so hopefully that will generate some interest and input from the community broadly. And the township, I believe, shared it as well on social media. So hopefully, we can come to a good design that's going to address these things. And if there are opportunities to potentially relocate trees if we aren't able to keep them, and have the engineering fit the necessary stabilization of that bank. We've spent a lot of money trying to have it not erode. And over the last years, I know I've been down there to take pictures after a flood because residents have called and have had very, very big concerns about safety for themselves and other people. So yeah, the project is needed, and hopefully we can do it in a way that preserves as much of the natural environment there as possible. And I will be looking at the details.
Thanks, Jen. Tracy, you had your hand up too.
I feel like I need to say something about a Norway maple, but I can't. This is so nothing to do with Norway maples on my comment. But I just wanted to circle back to just make sure we stay on point for responding to the survey that maybe either on our heritage website or maybe Nick, when you circulate it, to include like even the map of the Heritage Conservation District, just to show, following up on what Al was saying, that it does encompass that on things that following our mandate on what we can comment on based on, like whether it's like related to like a cultural heritage landscape, or is it related to something that might, I don't know, but just sort of look at again on the mandate and where it fits and how we can respond from a committee point of view. And then you're welcome as residents to respond on your own as well. But I think just it's important that we stick to those parameters as well.
Thanks, Tracy. I don't know if you or maybe Harold, if you know this, do you know their timing that they're hoping to do for the project? Like, are they hoping to start work this year, or is it? I see a nod.
Sorry. That's my understanding, is that they would start this year.
Yes, I can definitively say that that is the intention.
Okay.
And also, Nick, I was going to mention too. So I think was it 2 weeks, 2 weeks before it closes? About that or so? Or did
Yeah,
I get that
2 weeks.
wrong?
Week and a half, April 25th.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was put out maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago now. I can't remember when it came out for comment, but yeah.
Wilmot Hart got the email last Friday, I think.
Yeah, I was just looking at my email too.
Inviting us for comment. I don't know. So.
Okay, the last few days have felt like longer than.
Okay. Anything else on that item? I will send the email we got the other day, as well as a good suggestion on the HGD map, Tracy. So I will include that as well. Anything else under correspondence or info sharing? Red?
I got an interesting phone call the other day from the fellow who owns the former Ed Rick Butcher Shop across from the Emporium, where the Emporium building was. And his name is Mike Hartek, and he sharpens saw blades in the basement of that building. And he has plans to open up the top of the building and put a staircase in and invite, have a retail space in there. And he says in the basement of that building, there's still some of the old lard rendering tubs and a bunch of the stuff that Ed Rick had when it was a butcher shop. So kind of interesting. So I might go over and visit him one of these days and, see what they got. So interesting. So it's nice that maybe he can start a new business in Baden.
Yeah, that's neat.
Tell her, yeah.
Anyone else? Last call, going once, twice? No? All right. That is all for the agenda then. Our next meeting will be on May 11th at 6:30. Probably virtual again. We'll see. Where things are headed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it'll be virtual again. And then
Oh, Ren. Excellent. We are adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye,
have a
everybody.
happy Easter.
happy
Yeah,
Easter,
Happy
everybody.
Easter.
Oh yeah, happy
you too.
Easter weekend.
Yeah.